The barrier, which grew over the years from high fence to solid steel structure, stopped the violence, made the people who lived in the houses around the park, and those homes were often attacked, feel a whole lot safer. Like the majority of the peace walls in Belfast, it was erected at the request of the locals.
The most prominent barriers in the past few years separate the Nationalist Falls Road and the Unionist Shankill Road areas of West Belfast, the Catholic Short Strand from the President Clune Place areas of East Belfast, and the President Fountain Estate and Catholic Bishop Street areas of Derry.
Well, I lived on a pretty active interface in East Belfast, and whenever I lived at the interface, there was no wall.
We, us Catholics, nationalists, would have been able to travel over the Springfield Road up till the Shankill to go into a big park called Woodville, and we'd have played there with two coats or two jumpers on the ground as your football nets.
Eventually they did create a division, but it wasn't an actual wall. It was about 50 feet of thorn bushes and a fence on one side of the road. But again, sort of living there during that period where there was a lot of sort of trouble, gun battles and stuff like that, they were a necessary evil.
Whenever I started growing up, there was no walls, so there wasn't, and it was only until the early 70s, and then I was sort of riding every day.
It was just sort of pretty much an open battleground.
I was down out walking with my mate, and we'd riding as usual, but everybody was doing it. Actually, that's where I got my first dog, because I must have belonged to a Catholic, and it just followed me. And I asked my dad, could I keep it, and he just said yeah. And it was just so funny, because I turned a Catholic dog into a potty dog type of thing, so it was really funny.
They were built as temporary structures meant to last only 6 months, but due to their effective nature, they have become wider, longer and more permanent.
By the end of 1969, people started building these temporary walls. Actually, they'll be down again by Christmas. But people have grown to get used to them, and in a way they've become like a comfort blanket over the last 40 years.
Instead of it being corrugated iron, they built a more permanent wall, and the peace walls certainly over here would be built in 3 stages: concrete, palisade and then wire netting. They were there to keep both sides apart.
In my time here, I've seen some peace walls go up, I've seen some come down. There's some areas in Belfast that I would place where there are no peace walls, but yet some of the difficulties between the two communities are just the same, if not worse. So sometimes the walls themselves are only a physical manifestation of the problems that are there between communities.
The Berlin Wall stood as a symbol of the Cold War for nearly 30 years. The first peace barriers were built in 1969 and are still standing, but not as well known.
Up until probably 3-4 years ago, I would never have went over the other side of the wall.
I used to find it difficult going to the Catholic side of the community, but now I'm grand.
I must say, over the last number of years when we're working, I'm a youth worker and I work within different groups, and I do feel a lot more secure.
If you ask me, do I feel safe when I'm over there? Not really. There's still a lot of sort of mistrust and fear that's there, because we're not at the end project in terms of the full peace process.
I've no doubt if these walls were going down tonight, that there would be trouble along this interface here, no doubt about it. So while I would like to see them there, I wouldn't like to see them there long term. I recognise that they are required because they are a symptom of the political sort of problem. From a political point of view, we're not there yet, so they're necessary at the time.
What we had this year, as we have every year, once it comes to the month of July, it was a fierce time, but it could have been a lot worse. And we've learned a lesson of that.
I mean, the difference about recently is you can't dance outside Catholic churches. You can't sing anti-sectarian songs and piss on walls of Catholic churches.
Hopefully, over the next few months, there'll be time when we get to the next of the summer season of marches, we'll have been more mature, more open and more understanding to create the dialogue between us, rather to head off any of the violence on the streets.
The issues that we used to appear on walls don't appear there anymore, because we now have elected representatives in suits dealing with those issues in a democratic way. And that's the message we want to see. And the more they achieve, the more successful we will be.
In recent years, they have even become locations for tourism. Black taxis now take groups of tourists around Belfast peace lines, trouble spots and famous murals.
Take back the city for yourself tonight. I'll take back the city for me.
Well, I was painting a mural on the Shankill Road one day, and a car was slowly going past, sort of rubbernecked, watching what I was doing. So I was watching him because I didn't know who he was or was he going to do anything. and he crashed into a car in front of him because he was so busy watching me. And then he proceeded to get out of a car and do a boulder.
I remember one time going to a call where there was a report that there was a huge riot going on and it was going to be really bad. And whenever we got there, as we drove down the street, I could see the young people up against the fence. So as we drove down the street, we had our blue lights on, horns on, but whenever we got there, they were actually hugging each other through the fence.
I think there's one thing that we know for sure is that everybody wants to see the wall coming down. The issues are, how do you take the walls down? And the job that we're involved in, working with young people in particular, is to instill confidence, is to get young people to look to the future and to try and understand the impact that the wall, the actual physical wall itself is having. It's one of the more sinister walls that we face, that we're up against. And until we change that mindset of people, the physical barrier is going to remain there.
I want my kids to grow up, be friends with Catholics and getting on with Catholics. Like,
hopefully, once the new generation comes in and maybe another generation, that the walls or divisions within our society will be a part of the past.
I believe the communities that live either side of the peace wall need a lot of investment put into them. And once that investment goes in, it will build confidence in those communities.
Our focus has got to be on working with people, changing mindsets, changing attitudes and opinions, and then we can start to look at the actual taking down of the wall.
Huh?